The call that changed everything came as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting Simon Martinez's office in a warm, golden glow. A woman's voice on the line informed him that his wife had been detained at the border, with their 2 children, $19,000 in cash, and an unidentified man. That very morning, she'd kissed him on the cheek and said she was taking the kids to visit her mother in Phoenix. Now, fake passports, forged documents, a shattered sense of reality. But Simon isn't the kind of man who panics. A former military intelligence officer, he's trained to see what others miss. And as the past begins to unravel, a terrifying truth emerges. His marriage, his family, his entire life had been part of a meticulously planned operation. Deception had entered his home disguised as love, and his children had become bargaining chips in someone else's game. But when the hunter becomes the hunted, he doesn't run. He strikes back. And those who spun the web still have time to regret it. Just not much. Greetings, my dear friend. I am very happy that you are watching my video, and I will be even happier if you subscribe to my channel. This will make me even happier. Let's get started. Simon Martinez's fingers clenched tighter around his phone as an unfamiliar voice on the other end delivered a message that shattered the normalcy of his world. Mr. Martinez, this is Agent Davis with U.S. Border Patrol. Your wife has been detained at the border. She had $19,000 in cash with her, your 2 children, and a man we haven't identified. The room around him, his home office washed in the golden haze of approaching dusk, seemed to freeze. Shadows stretched long over the polished hardwood, and for a moment, Simon couldn't move. Just that morning, Vanessa had kissed him on the cheek and said she was driving their daughter Ellie, 8, and their son Nolan, 6, to her mother's in Phoenix for the weekend. There's got to be a mistake, Simon said tightly. His voice was measured, but strain laced every word. My wife is visiting family, not crossing borders. She was stopped at the Nogales port of entry, sir, the agent replied calmly. She's currently in custody. We flagged her passport. It triggered a system alert. We'll need you to come in to verify her identity and confirm that the children are yours. Simon ended the call without a word. He turned to his desk, opened the GPS tracking app they all used, and saw that Vanessa's phone was no longer transmitting. Odd for someone who posted nearly every moment of her life online. He sat down at his laptop and pulled up their shared bank records. Nearly $19,000 had disappeared earlier that day. The transfer had required 2 approvals. Digital documents popped up on screen bearing his forged signature. Vanessa had faked the authorization. But Simon wasn't some helpless husband blindsided by betrayal. He'd spent 15 years in military intelligence before launching Martinez Security Solutions. He was trusted by government bodies and elite clients alike for his strategic mind, discretion, and unshakable focus. Survival had always depended on one principle: never trust at face value. That old instinct came roaring back. Within minutes, he was packing for the 4-hour drive to the border. Before walking out, he opened his gun safe, took out his Glock 19, and loaded it with smooth, practiced efficiency. He tucked the weapon beneath his jacket. Whatever awaited him, he wouldn't walk in blind. The detention facility buzzed beneath harsh fluorescent lights, its air filled with quiet tension and the muffled sounds of officers at work. Agent Davis, an older man with silvered hair and a face lined by fatigue, guided Simon into a small windowless interview room. She's saying almost nothing, Davis reported. The guy she was with claims he barely knows her, said she hired him for an escort job, strictly transactional. You're not buying it, Simon said, reading the skepticism in the agent's eyes. She gave us a passport under the name Anna Walsh. It's a good forgery, but it got flagged. The kid's paperwork looks authentic, though it's recently issued. Simon's expression hardened. I never signed off on passports for my children. Davis slid a file across the table. Inside were copies of the applications, dated 3 months earlier, with forged versions of his signature. "I want to speak to her," Simon said flatly. When Vanessa entered the room, gone was the polished woman he'd married 9 years ago. She wore a plain detention uniform, and without makeup, her face showed every crease of worry and exhaustion. Still, there was no remorse in her eyes, only defiance. "Simon," she began quietly. "Where were you taking them?" he asked, voice like ice. "Mom's sick," she said quickly. "I needed to get to Phoenix fast." "Phoenix is north, you were heading south. Try again." Vanessa's poise cracked. "The money. It's for her medical bills. I didn't have any other option." "No more lies," he snapped. "Who's the man?" "Just someone I paid for protection," she muttered, avoiding his gaze. Simon turned to Davis. "I want a word with him." The man who entered was lean, with sharp features and striking blue eyes. He gave his name as Philip Rollins and claimed he worked independently as a private security contractor, hired that morning by Vanessa. "First time I met her," he said smoothly. "She offered cash for safe passage." Simon watched him closely. A small flicker near the man's left eye, a twitch, barely perceptible, confirmed what he already knew. Rollins was lying. With temporary custody granted, Simon took Ellie and Nolan from the facility and booked them a hotel room. After settling them in for the night, watching their small, exhausted bodies curl up in the unfamiliar bed, he sat at the desk, opened his laptop, and connected to the hotel Wi-Fi. The investigation began. By sunrise, he had a name. Hidden deep in a cluster of accounts Vanessa had never mentioned was an email linked to the name Anna Walsh. Inside were months' worth of messages, travel plans, and reservations, including a one-way flight to São Paulo. With both Vanessa and Rollins now in federal custody for passport fraud and attempting an illegal border crossing, Simon brought the kids back home and made a call to Tessa Romano, a former intelligence ally now working as a private investigator. "I need everything you can dig up on Philip Rollins," he told her, "and find out who Anna Walsh really is." Over the next several days, the truth unraveled like thread from a torn flag. Anna Walsh had been Vanessa's cousin, killed in a car accident 5 years ago. Slowly and methodically, Vanessa had used her cousin's personal data to build a duplicate identity. But Rollins's past ran deeper. Born Philip Rodriguez, he had once served in the same military intelligence division as Simon. He'd been dishonorably discharged for allegedly leaking classified materials. Their paths had only crossed briefly, years ago in Virginia. "You knew him?" Tessa asked during a follow-up meeting at Simon's office. "Barely," he replied. "Different squads, different missions, but he definitely knows who I am." Tessa spread a fresh stack of surveillance photos across the table, Vanessa and Philip, comfortably entwined at a Phoenix resort. "They've been seeing each other for at least 14 months, she said, voice clipped. "And that's not all. She's been quietly moving small amounts of money into offshore accounts for nearly 2 years, just subtle enough to stay undetected." The weight of it landed like a blow to Simon's chest. The affair had started when their children were still young, too young to grasp the shifting ground beneath their family. All the while, Vanessa maintained the illusion, dutiful wife, devoted mother, while meticulously building an escape plan in the shadows. The next time Simon visited her in custody, he brought the file with him, cold, undeniable evidence. His voice was steady, but heavy with betrayal. "Why?" At last, the mask cracked. Vanessa's composed exterior dissolved, revealing something raw and untamed beneath. "You were never really present, Simon," she replied. "Always on some mission, always unreachable. Philip made me feel like I mattered, like I was seen. And now you're going to rip the kids away from me?" "They deserve a father who's actually here," she continued, "not someone who only sees life through a sniper's lens. You didn't love me. You love the idea of a perfect home to come back to between deployments. Her words were calculated, each one landing with precise intent, but Simon didn't flinch. You're being charged with federal crimes, Vanessa. The kids stay with me. He turned and walked out. You have no idea who Philip's connected to, she shouted after him. This is far from over. That night, as Simon tucked Ellie and Nolan into bed, Ellie looked up at him with wide, uncertain eyes. Is Mommy a bad guy now? He paused, carefully choosing his response. She made some bad choices, but that doesn't mean she's a bad person. The words tasted bitter, an intentional lie for their sake. After they drifted to sleep, he sat alone in his study, the glow of the laptop illuminating the darkness. If Philip had powerful friends, Simon had his own network. It was time to call in favors. 3 weeks after the border incident, Simon received word. Vanessa had been released on bail under the radar. No press, no prior notice. Judge Harvey King had signed off on it, disregarding the prosecution's protests without explanation. Philip, for now, remained behind bars. Tessa brought more intelligence. King has a lake house registered to an LLC. That LLC traces back to a company called Sentinel Operations. Simon's eyes narrowed. Who's behind Sentinel? Barrett Walsh, Philip's former commanding officer, and you'll never guess who his daughter is. Anna Walsh? Simon asked. Exactly. This wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated, tactical, intentional. The following day, Vanessa's lawyers filed for emergency custody, alleging that Simon was mentally unstable, unfit to parent due to supposed PTSD. The court filing included fabricated psychological evaluations and falsified medical records. The emergency hearing? Assigned to Judge King. Almost simultaneously, contracts at Martinez Security Solutions were being suspended. Clients pulled out, and federal agencies began probing into alleged leaks of classified material, based entirely on anonymous tips. They're coming after you from every direction, Tessa warned, trying to take the kids and destroy your career in one coordinated move. Simon nodded, jaw tight. And someone's funding this. Barrett Walsh has influence, in intelligence, in private military circles. If he's behind it, this goes way beyond a messy divorce. Later that evening, while combing through old home surveillance footage, something unusual caught Simon's attention. A recording from 6 months back. Vanessa hosting someone while he was deployed. A woman, mid-50s, silver hair, posture sharp with discipline. He zoomed in on the face. Lydia Walsh, Barrett's wife, Anna's mother. The next morning, Simon arrived in court with a new ally, Monroe Bishop, a ruthless litigator known for dismantling adversaries in contentious custody battles. Judge King didn't even try to hide his bias, cutting off Monroe repeatedly while giving Vanessa's counsel free rein. But then Monroe dropped the hammer, documents linking King financially to Barrett Walsh, including undeclared relationships and payments. The courtroom froze. Your Honor, Monroe said, handing a file to the bailiff, we're requesting your immediate recusal due to a clear conflict of interest, and we're filing a formal complaint with the State Judicial Review Board. King flushed crimson, rage etched across his face, but he had no choice. The hearing was postponed. A new judge would take over. Outside, Vanessa stormed up to Simon, livid. You don't know who you're messing with. Simon didn't blink. Neither do you. With the heat intensifying, Simon moved the children to Naomi's rural farm, secluded, secure. Naomi, once an army medic, had transformed the land into a sanctuary for veterans. It was well defended, and more importantly, it was safe. With the kids protected, Simon dove deeper. The breakthrough came from someone unexpected. His former CO, General Michael Reeves. Barrett Walsh was running an off-book op called Monarch, Reeves revealed in a quiet meeting inside a remote cabin. Started February 2008, ended in 2013. Officially, it never existed. The project's shutdown was never officially announced. Behind the scenes, it was buried after damning claims emerged. Barrett Walsh had repurposed it as a weapon, eliminating political and corporate rivals for his high-paying clients. Simon narrowed his eyes. What does any of that have to do with Vanessa? In response, Reeves produced a faded, creased photograph. It showed a younger Walsh flanked by a group of field operatives. Simon studied the image and suddenly went still. The third person from the left, right next to Walsh, was someone he recognized instantly. A younger Vanessa, only back then, she'd gone by a different name. Vanessa Reagan. She had been one of Monarch's top-tier infiltrators, renowned for embedding herself into people's lives by earning their trust. Once Monarch collapsed, its agents were either reassigned or simply vanished. In that instant, the world Simon had known shattered. Vanessa hadn't just betrayed him. She'd been assigned to him. "Why target me?" he asked, his voice low. Reeves's expression turned grim. "Because of your last mission in Afghanistan. The intel you uncovered linked Walsh directly to arms deals with insurgent networks. Although that evidence never made it to the Capitol, Walsh knew exactly who had been responsible for digging it up." "So my entire marriage was a setup?" Simon's voice faltered. Reeves nodded slowly. "It was a covert operation. Her job was to monitor you, make sure you didn't uncover more. And if you did, her mission was to destroy your credibility." "What about Philip?" "Likely part of the extraction unit. Walsh must have decided it was time to wipe the slate clean." As Simon drove away from Reeves's secluded cabin, his thoughts spiraled. Nearly 10 years of memories, trust, and love, all false. His entire family life had been a manufactured lie. Then his phone rang. A blocked number lit up the screen. "Mr. Martinez?" A woman's voice came through. "My name is Diane Rodriguez. I used to handle Philip during Monarch. We need to talk, face to face." Their rendezvous took place in an abandoned warehouse at the edge of the city. Diane, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, studied Simon like a field report. "Walsh is erasing loose ends," she said without preamble. "Vanessa and Philip were supposed to disappear with your kids. Destination Brazil. That sudden cash in your bank accounts, that was their payout." Simon's face darkened. "Why involve my children?" "They're a leash," she replied flatly. "As long as they have the kids, you won't risk exposing Walsh." "So why contact me now?" Her jaw tightened. "Because my son tried to blow the whistle on Monarch. Walsh had him executed. I've been building a case ever since, waiting for the right moment to strike. You're not the only one with a score to settle, Mr. Martinez." She handed him a flash drive. "Everything I've collected on Walsh, Monarch, and your wife is on here. Use it carefully." As she turned to leave, she offered one last warning. "They'll come for your kids again. At this point, it's not just about silencing you. You made it personal. Walsh wants to make an example out of you." Not long after, the retaliation began. Child Protective Services showed up at Naomi's ranch with a court order, signed unsurprisingly by yet another judge under King's control. Fortunately, Simon had seen it coming. He had already moved the kids to a safe house. Only he and Tessa knew the location. At the same time, his private security firm came under fire. Federal agents raided Martinez Security Solutions, confiscating records and servers after anonymous reports accused him of storing stolen classified material. The walls were closing in, fast. But with Diane's flash drive as a guide, Simon began putting together a counterattack. It had to be airtight, and he needed allies he could trust with his life. His first call went to Harrison Webb, a former NSA prodigy turned rogue cybersecurity specialist. With Webb's assistance, Simon built encrypted systems to stay ahead of any digital surveillance. Next, he contacted Vera Santiago, a relentless journalist with a reputation for unraveling corruption at the highest levels. He didn't tell her everything, but gave her just enough of a trail to start following Walsh's financial web. Still, the heart of the operation lay hidden in the data Diane had provided. Buried in the files was information about a covert server, one that archived all of Monarch's darkest secrets, including video evidence of assassinations sanctioned by Walsh himself. It was housed inside a facility owned by a shell company with ties to Walsh. That server became Simon's primary objective. With it, he could dismantle everything Walsh had built and reclaim his name. But before he could make that move, he needed to deal with Vanessa and Philip. Both had been released on bail, thanks to Walsh's legal power, and they remained a clear and present danger. Not just to Simon, but to his children. More than that, they were Walsh's soft underbelly. By tracking Vanessa's movements, Simon discovered their next move. They believed the kids were at his sister's house and were preparing to abduct them from there. Rather than stop them outright, Simon saw an opportunity. He turned their plan into bait, a trap that could give him a decisive advantage and perhaps even provoke Walsh into making a mistake. "You're sure about this?" Tessa asked, reviewing the final prep with him. "Once we go through with it, there's no going back." Simon stared at a photo of his kids on the desk, his reason for everything. "They took 9 years from me," he said, voice like steel. "Now they want my children too. I'm done playing defense." There was no path back to the life Simon once knew. As evening shadows swallowed the horizon, he put the final piece in place of a vengeance he had crafted over years. By the time dawn broke, the roles would be reversed. The hunters would find themselves hunted. He sent out a fabricated tip through a vulnerable channel. Naomi would be taking the children to a doctor's visit the following morning. As he had hoped, surveillance footage from Tessa confirmed it. Philip had swallowed the bait and positioned himself near Naomi's property, prepared to intercept. But Philip had no idea what truly awaited him. Expecting a simple ambush on a quiet rural route, he walked directly into a far more elaborate scheme. As his black SUV crept toward a lonely crossroads, where he intended to ambush Naomi, 3 indistinct pickup trucks emerged from the gloom and boxed him in. Each vehicle carried a former military comrade of Simon, elite and unflinching. Before Philip could even consider an escape, an electromagnetic pulse shut down his SUV in an instant. Engine dead, electronics fried, silence absolute. He flung open the door to flee on foot, only to find Simon already there, stepping calmly from one of the pickups to cut off his escape. 9 years, Simon said, his voice measured as he cinched zip ties around Philip's wrists. My wife, my children, my entire life. Pieces in Walsh's game. For the first time, Philip's emotionless mask slipped. You've walked into something far bigger than you realize, Martinez. No, Simon said evenly. I know exactly what I'm doing. He held up his phone, revealing a live video stream. Vanessa, cornered in a cafe by Tessa and 2 field agents, nervously checking her phone for confirmation of a successful abduction. Within the hour, both Philip and Vanessa were bound and transported to a secluded cabin owned by one of Simon's most trusted allies. There they sat, restrained, facing each other, as Simon entered, calm and in control. He placed a laptop between them and flipped it open. Barrett Walsh, he said, turning the screen so they could both see. On it was a live satellite feed of Walsh's fortified estate, currently hosting a high-profile fundraiser for Senator Grimes. In 30 minutes, federal agents will raid the compound, Simon said. They have a warrant and irrefutable evidence, courtesy of an anonymous insider. Vanessa's face turned ghostly pale. You'll never get to him. He's insulated by powerful allies. He was, Simon corrected. Funny thing, powerful friends vanish when you show them murder and treason on tape. He clicked play. Footage from Monarch's server appeared. Walsh giving a direct order to eliminate a federal prosecutor investigating one of his partners. Diane Rodriguez gave me the access keys, Simon said. All the data has been copied and secured in multiple locations. If anything happens to me or my kids, everything goes public. Philip spoke through clenched teeth. What do you want? First, Simon said, written confessions from both of you, detailing your part in Walsh's operations and the attempted kidnapping. Second, you testify when the feds dismantle him. Vanessa's voice wavered. He'll kill us. That's a choice you'll have to make, Simon said coldly. Just like you decided my children didn't matter. He let the silence settle thickly between them, then added, You should also know. Others in the Monarch Web are getting this same offer right now. Immunity goes to the first who flips. The rest, they'll drown in federal charges. It was a calculated lie. Philip and Vanessa were the only ones he had been able to track down. But the seed of doubt had been planted. In their world, loyalty was only skin deep. Fear peeled it back with ease. Philip broke first. I want full immunity. In writing. Vanessa looked at him, stunned. Then she turned to Simon, her voice subdued. In the beginning, it was just a job. But the kids... I love them, Simon. I really do. Not enough, he replied. You always chose yourself. Sign the confessions. Testify. I'll make sure you land in a minimum security facility, he said. Refuse, and I'll make certain every inmate you ever put away knows your name. By nightfall, Simon had their signed statements and recorded testimonies. The trap around Walsh had officially snapped shut. The raid on the estate made headlines. Agents recovered classified files connecting him to Monarch and uncovered illegal arms deals with embargoed nations. Senator Grimes, caught mid-speech at the fundraiser, instantly distanced himself from Walsh, feigning ignorance of any wrongdoing. In a modest hotel across the city, Simon watched it unfold on TV while Tessa quietly prepared for what would follow. Then his phone rang. General Reeves. They've got him, Reeves confirmed, but his wife, Lydia, is missing. Stay alert, Simon. Lydia's as deep in this as Barrett ever was. The warning came moments too late. Just as Simon ended the call, the door to the hotel room burst open. Lydia Walsh entered like a force of nature, composed, deadly, and pointing a silenced pistol at his chest. 9 years of work, she said, voice calm, gun unwavering. All undone in 1 week. You were always a cleanup job. Vanessa's final order. Tessa moved to draw her firearm, but Lydia was quicker. A muffled shot rang out. Tessa dropped to the floor, clutching her shoulder. As Lydia turned the gun back toward Simon, he saw it. An instant of distraction as her eyes flicked away. That was all the opening he needed. Simon lunged, knocking her arm just as the pistol fired. The bullet grazed his ribs, but he drove into her with full force, sending them both crashing to the ground. They grappled fiercely. Lydia, though older, was a formidable combatant, honed by years of covert operations. Anna would still be alive if not for you, she growled, teeth clenched as they wrestled for control of the weapon. Barrett had orchestrated her death, not for strategy, but for Vanessa, to grant her a pristine cover for extraction. The revelation added another grotesque layer to the horror of Walsh's machinations. He had sacrificed his own daughter to fabricate a new identity for Vanessa. With practiced speed, Simon wrenched the gun from Lydia's hand, sending it skidding across the floor. But before he could secure her, she twisted free, revealing a concealed blade in her boot, and lashed upward. He jerked back just in time, narrowly avoiding a gouge to the eye. Still, the blade sliced a brutal path along his cheek. As she surged forward for another strike, a shot rang out. Lydia fell instantly, blood spreading across her chest as she hit the ground. Behind her, Tessa stood, breathing hard, her injured arm trembling as she lowered her smoking weapon. "The kids," Simon gasped, pressing his hand to the bleeding wound on his face. They had to find the children. The safe house, where Naomi was stationed to protect Ellie and Nolan, had gone dark. No calls, No encrypted messages. Nothing. Hearts pounding, Simon and Tessa raced there. They found Naomi drugged but alive, sedated and slumped against a wall. The children, however, were gone. Not a single clue remained. Then Simon's phone lit up with a call, video, from an unlisted number. When he answered, Barrett Walsh's face filled the screen, remarkably unscathed after the raid. Beside him stood Ellie and Nolan, their fear unmistakable. "A simple trade, Martinez," Walsh said coolly. "You bring the evidence. I return the kids. Coordinates are on the way. And you come alone." The location led to a long-abandoned military installation buried in the desert. An old Monarch black site, if Diane's intel was right. Simon didn't argue. He went. But he didn't go unprepared. Inside, the air hung heavy with dust and threat. In the bunker's core chamber, Walsh waited. Calm, a pistol dangling casually from his grip. The children were nowhere in sight. "Where's the evidence?" Walsh asked. "Not until I see them," Simon replied. Walsh's smile was jagged, predatory. "You're not in a position to negotiate. You tore down everything I built. You don't get to dictate terms." "And you think you do?" Walsh sneered. "I've already distributed the files," Simon said, voice steady. "FBI, Justice, a few foreign intelligence contacts. This isn't about secrets anymore, Barrett. It's about whether your grandchildren survive." Walsh's expression flickered. Confusion, then disbelief. "What are you talking about?" "I questioned Vanessa's story, so I had the kids tested," Simon said. "Ellie's father is Philip Rodriguez. That makes her your granddaughter." Walsh's composure faltered. "That's not possible," he whispered. "Vanessa couldn't have children. She had that procedure years ago. Records can be faked. You taught her that," Simon replied, taking a slow step forward. "Look at her. Ellie has your eyes. I missed it before. But now it's all I can see." The ice in Walsh's demeanor began to crack. "You're bluffing." "You authorized the death of your own daughter," Simon said softly. "Would you do the same to your granddaughter?" Walsh's doubt began to show. Simon leaned in. "Prove they're okay, and I'll give you the test results." Silence hung between them, thick and charged. Finally, Walsh tapped a control on his device. A reinforced door creaked open, and a guard ushered the children into the room. The moment they spotted Simon, they bolted toward him, throwing themselves into his arms. "The report," Walsh demanded. Simon nodded at Ellie. "Go on, sweetheart, show him." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device that looked like a toy. But when she clicked it, the compact jammer activated. Overhead lights died. Emergency red filled the room. "Now!" Simon shouted. A section of the wall behind Walsh erupted in flame as Tessa and a strike team surged through the breach. In the chaos, Walsh swung his gun toward Simon and the children, but he never fired. Simon drew a hidden sidearm and placed 3 clean shots into Walsh's chest. As Walsh collapsed, Simon wrapped the children in his arms, shielding them as the team swept in, clearing the bunker and arresting the remaining guards. Outside, under a rising sun, the desert shimmered in hues of gold and crimson as medics treated the children. "Was it true?" Tessa asked quietly, standing beside him. "Is Ellie really his granddaughter?" Simon shook his head. "Test was negative. No relation." "But he didn't know that," Tessa said, glancing back toward the shattered facility where Walsh had taken his final breath. "And now he never will." 30 days later, the world knew everything. Vera Santiago's bombshell investigation detonated across media outlets worldwide, unleashing the full extent of the Monarch scandal. Sworn testimonies from Vanessa and Philip, along with damning digital records retrieved from Monarch's servers, led to a wave of arrests and forced resignations, 3 top-level government officials among them. Vanessa was handed a 15-year sentence for her involvement, charged with conspiracy, endangerment of minors, and systemic fraud. She'd be eligible for parole after 7. Philip, implicated in targeted assassinations, received a full 25, no chance for release. Far from the chaos, Simon now stood on the deck of his coastal home, a refuge carved out for Ellie and Nolan, a place for them to begin again. The kids were adapting, slowly, gently, and so was he. Their resilience had become the unspoken reason behind every painful truth faced and each gamble taken along the journey. The faint scar tracing his cheek, Lydia's final parting gesture, had softened over the years, but it remained as a quiet emblem of how closely he'd brushed complete destruction. Not all damage, however, showed itself on the skin. The disintegration of a 9-year marriage and the bitter awareness that his children had been pawns in a deeper scheme had carved wounds too deep for time to mend. When Naomi came for Thanksgiving, her own family in tow, she immediately sensed something different in her brother. He was harder now, with a quiet edge to him, but when it came to his kids, he was more present, more anchored than she'd ever known him to be. "Have you heard from Vanessa lately?" she asked, eyes tracking the children running along the water's edge. "She sends letters," Simon answered calmly. "I read them first. If the kids decide they want to see her one day, I won't stop them. That's for them to choose when they're ready. But what about you? Have you found a way to forgive her?" Simon didn't look at her. His gaze lingered on a cargo ship gliding across the horizon, slow and purposeful. "Some betrayals don't deserve forgiveness," he said. "You just find a way to survive them." After a beat, he added, "I'll never forgive her, or Philip, or anyone connected to Monarch, but I won't let their choices write the future my children grow up with." As twilight painted the coastline in warm, burnished light, Simon called his children back to share the evening meal. The life they once had been built on illusion, but what stood now was founded on something far more lasting, truth, earned through struggle and held with unwavering resolve. Like spilled blood or poisoned wells, some things can never be fully undone. Yet Simon had come to realize a deeper truth. Family wasn't defined by blood or past. It was forged in loyalty, shaped by who you protect without hesitation, and who you become after everything you trusted has been shattered by betrayal. Our story comes to an end here. Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for taking the time to watch. If you enjoyed this story, please check out other videos on this channel. See you soon, my dear friend.